Morgan, be honest. What's it like to sound smarter than you actually feel? The room fell silent. Freeman looked up. Anthony Rose, a young stand-up comedian, smirked confidently from the stage. It's fascinating, really. You could read toilet instructions, and people would think it's philosophy. The laughter that had filled the hall just moments ago vanished. Freeman didn't respond. He stood up and started walking toward the stage. His footsteps echoed across the marble floor, louder than any words. For a split second, the comedian took a step back. Everyone in the audience knew what was about to happen would never be forgotten, and the best part was yet to come. Stay tuned to find out how it all ends. And while you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next part. The ballroom at the Fairmont Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles was awash with opulence. Velvet chairs, crystal chandeliers, silverware, everything in the space spoke of money, influence, and privilege. It was a night for the elite. A charity auction to support youth programs drew Hollywood's elite, billionaires, politicians, people accustomed to being on top of the world. Glasses of champagne glittered in the semi-darkness. Waiters glided between tables, offering miniature tartlets with black caviar and oysters in champagne sauce. The air was filled with a mixture of expensive perfume, elite wines, and a barely perceptible falseness. That very artificial secularity that is inherent in such events. Morgan Freeman was in the center of the room, but as always, he seemed timeless. 87 years old with the posture of a king, a look that concealed decades of wisdom and experience. He was not here to pose or maintain the illusion of Hollywood brotherhood. He came for the essence, for real help. People came up to him, shook his hand, said something admiring, but he knew that most of these compliments had no meaning. They were just part of the ritual, a big game in which everyone knew how to follow the rules. How nice to see you, Morgan. Your voice is the voice of America itself. Sure, I grew up on your films. Honestly, if it weren't for the Shawshank Redemption, I wouldn't have believed in the dream. You don't drink, do you? Then let me drink to you. Someone laughed, raising a glass. Freeman smiled, nodded slightly, answered politely, but without much zeal. He felt this evening was too perfect. It could not continue. In such places, the silence always precedes the storm. Soon the waiters began to gently invite the guests to take their seats. The official part of the evening was beginning. The program was predictable. Speeches of thanks, presentation of patrons, fundraising. But the main thing is the invited speaker. It was Anthony Rose, a rising star stand-up comedian known for his sharp tongue and uncompromising jokes. He was young, ambitious, and ruthless, exactly what audiences were now craving. His performances made audiences scream with laughter and gasp with outrage at the same time. He knew how to play on the edge, switching from subtle humor to vicious attacks before anyone knew when it was too much. When the evening's host announced his entrance, the audience burst into applause. Freeman didn't clap. He knew something was wrong. Rose walked onto the stage wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, with his hair perfectly coiffed and that smirk that always meant trouble. Well, ladies and gentlemen, he began with impeccable confidence, as if the world were his. What an evening! Look around you. So much glamour. So many famous faces. Even my bank account is feeling poor. The crowd laughed. Rose continued. I always dreamed of going to a charity event like this. There are so many celebrities here that even the food has an agent. The laughter grew louder. He warmed up the crowd, knew how to lull them to sleep before he struck. Freeman didn't laugh. He saw Rose looking for a target. Now, let's talk about a real legend, about a man who could sell me my own socks with his voice. Rose turned to the table where Freeman sat. Morgan. For a moment there was silence in the room. You are a national treasure. Your voice is like good old whiskey. The problem is that whiskey only gets better with time. But people... The hall froze. Freeman looked up. You played God. You voiced nature. You gave hope to millions. But you know what scares me the most? Pause. Rose smiled, leaning forward slightly like a hunter about to make the final throw. I'm afraid that one day your voice will tell me that I'm dead, and I won't be able to argue with it. A nervous laugh broke out in the room. Someone leaned back. Someone looked at Freeman with alarm. But that was just the beginning. Rose saw that the audience was ready. Now he could move on. Morgan, tell me honestly, what is it like to be a person who sounds smarter than he feels? It's amazing. You could read the instructions for a toilet, and everyone would think it was philosophy. The audience stopped laughing. Freeman didn't look away, but something in the air changed. Rose took a step forward, enjoying the silence that hung between him and his victim. Of course, I understand that it may be difficult for you to understand what I'm talking about. After all, at such an age, memory is not what it used to be. And at that moment, something broke. The audience didn't laugh. People didn't know if they could keep up the joke. Freeman looked straight at Rose, calmly, silently, as a person who knows something that this whole room doesn't know. Rose felt it, and for the first time that evening, his smug smile wavered. Silence held the moment. The hall was waiting. Freeman did not respond. He moved, slowly, decisively. The sound of chair legs sliding across the floor pierced the silence louder than any applause. The hall froze. Everyone understood that something was about to happen that no one would forget. Freeman walked to the stage, straight to Rose. The comedian took a step back, and at that moment the room stopped breathing. When Morgan Freeman stepped forward, time stood still. The entire audience, actors, directors, politicians, businessmen, was now watching not the stage, not the comedian Anthony Rose, but one person. The room suddenly narrowed, and only two people remained in its center. An 87-year-old man whose name meant respect and greatness, and a young, confident stand-up comedian whose tongue was sharper than a knife. Rose didn't even try to hide his smirk, but there was something else in his eyes. Uncertainty? Fear? Or maybe the realization that he had finally crossed the line. Freeman walked calmly and measuredly. The sound of his footsteps echoed across the gleaming marble floor. Nobody moved. Someone squeezed the glass so hard that the glass cracked almost imperceptibly. Some didn't even blink, afraid of missing the moment, which might, in a few hours, spread across the entire internet. Rose took a barely noticeable step back. A slight movement, but it did not escape the attentive gaze. Freeman was in no hurry. He slowly walked up onto the stage. He took his place in front of the microphone. He stood in front of Rose, keeping his back straight as a rock. His face was expressionless. The room was silent. Morgan Freeman's footsteps on the gleaming marble floor sounded unnaturally loud, like the ticking of a clock, counting down the final moments to something irreversible. Anthony Rose, a self-assured comic who was used to holding an audience in his hands, looked different now. He didn't move, but his whole appearance had changed. A slight tilt of his shoulders, a slight tension in his jaw, a brief glance toward the evening's host, like an unconscious request for support. There was no support. The audience, which had been laughing at his jokes just a couple of minutes ago, now sat silently. Freeman was in no hurry. He never was. 87 years old. At this age, a person either loses himself or becomes an unshakable monument. Freeman chose the latter. He walked onto the stage, keeping his eyes on Rose. He didn't retreat, but something in his posture betrayed irritation, even fear. Perhaps for the first time, he wasn't in control of what was happening. Freeman stopped. The hall froze. "I like the joke about my voice, Anthony," he finally said. "You're right, I could read the instructions for the toilet." Silence. The hall seemed to freeze in anticipation of something irreversible. All eyes were on Morgan Freeman, who rose slowly from his seat. His movements were measured, confident, not rushed or fussy. He didn't look around, didn't seek support, didn't try to attract attention. He simply moved forward as if this moment was preordained. Anthony Rose, the same cocky, brash stand-up comedian who had just moments before been tearing up the room with jokes about Freeman's age and voice, had gone quiet. He still had a forced smile, but his eyes, there was doubt in his eyes. He didn't expect this. Freeman walked towards the stage. Step. One more step. Someone in the room grabbed a glass, and a thin crunch of glass pierced the air. Someone exchanged glances with their neighbor, as if asking, "Is this really happening?" And some just sat there, unblinking, as if afraid of missing a single detail. Freeman took the stage. The audience held its breath. Rose stood before him, unusually still. Freeman didn't take the microphone, didn't demand attention, didn't make any sudden movements. He just watched, and that was worse than any angry response. It was worse than a sarcastic retort, worse than humiliation. A piercing, harsh silence. Rose was the first to break down. "Wow," he chuckled, trying to hide his nervousness. "A legend has risen. I knew my comedy was waking people up, but I didn't know that even Morgan Freeman would have a reason to stretch his legs." He chuckled, but no one in the room laughed. Nobody. Rose felt it. He hesitated. Freeman tilted his head slightly, as if studying him. "You think you won today, right?" His voice was low and calm, but it filled the entire hall, drowning out everything. Rose blinked, as if he didn't immediately understand the question. Freeman continued, "You believe that if they laugh, you're right. That if your words cause a reaction, You've won, right? Um, Rose smiled slightly, shrugging. I'm a comedian, Morgan. It's my job. Work? Freeman frowned as if tasting the word. Pause. Rose couldn't stand the silence. Well, yeah, work. I joke. People laugh. It's an industry. Industry? Freeman nodded thoughtfully. I'll tell you what, Anthony. Do you know what distinguishes a good comedian from a cheap provocateur? Rose bit her lip. He didn't answer. A good comedian hits up. A cheap one hits down. Freeman paused deliberately, allowing the words to sink into the walls of the room, into the consciousness of the people, into the very essence of this moment. Do you consider yourself brave, Anthony? Rose didn't know what to say. Freeman took a step closer. But what I see before me is not courage. Rose held his breath. Freeman looked straight at him. I see fear. Somewhere in the corner of the room, someone gasped. Rose tensed. Scared? He chuckled, trying to regain control. Are you serious? Morgan, you don't scare me. Freeman chuckled. I'm not talking about fear of me. I'm talking about fear of the truth. Rose blinked. You joked about me because you thought I was an easy target. Because in a world where everyone is fighting for attention, it's easiest to attack those who are above you. The hall froze. But here's the problem, Anthony. You're wrong. Freeman leaned forward, tilting his head slightly, and his voice became even lower, even deeper. You chose the wrong target. At that moment, something happened. Rose turned pale. He didn't move. His hands clenched into fists, but not out of anger, but out of panic. There are plenty of people in the world who can be ridiculed, Freeman continued, but there is a fine line. A line that you have crossed, and now you realize it. Rose looked lost. Are you sure you want to continue, Anthony? Freeman's voice was almost gentle. Pause. Rose didn't answer. That's what I think too. Freeman turned slowly, came down from the stage. The hall was dead. Absolute, deafening silence. Rose was left alone on stage. 1. He did not immediately realize his defeat, but the public already knew. This evening did not belong to him anymore. Anthony Rose stood alone. Freeman had already left the stage, but all the attention of the audience was not focused on him. It was riveted on Rose, who had just experienced something he had never encountered before. Complete control over the audience has slipped away. Unexpectedly for himself, he suddenly realized that he was standing not before the public, but before the court. The audience didn't whistle or shout words of condemnation. None of that happened. But it was worse. Just silence. This silence was not empty. It was hard, dense, and viscous. It was a death sentence. Rose swallowed the lump in her throat, tried to make a joke to get the audience back on his side. Okay, someone here has clearly watched too much Knives Out. He chuckled, but no one laughed. Nobody. Rose tried again. My God, this is a charity event, not the finale of The Godfather. Gentlemen, relax. These are just jokes. But no one smiled anymore. He felt their gaze. Something has changed, and he realized it. He needs to get out of this situation, fast. Rose took a step back. The whole body was burning with heat. He wanted to say something else, but the words stuck in his throat. He didn't understand why. Everything he said before was normal. Everyone does it. He didn't do anything new. So why does it sound different now? Why does he feel something like, shame? He didn't want to admit it, but the silence did not let go. The silence was stifling. He looked into the hall. People sat motionless. Freeman calmly returned to his seat. He didn't demand an apology, didn't call for an answer. He just told the truth. And that was enough. Rose realized this, but it was too late. He lost the evening. The evening no longer belonged to him. Silence became the enemy. Anthony Rose didn't understand how this happened. Just a few minutes ago, he owned the room. They were laughing. He felt like he had the audience on a leash, that he could throw out lines like bait, drawing out a reaction, manipulating the energy of the room like puppets. But now everything is gone. The laughter died down. People were silent. There was something else in their eyes, not joy. Rose swallowed. He made another attempt, stupid, thoughtless. But he couldn't just stand there, enduring this awkward silence. What, guys, are you all such saints now? Is this a charity event or a meeting of a secret order of monks? Zero reaction. The words fell into the void. The eyes of the audience no longer sparkled with excitement. Now there was something different in them. They looked at him differently. Rose tried to joke again, but the words stuck in his throat. He understood that the more he talked, the deeper he dug himself. This is not just a failure. That was the end. He felt something akin to fear creeping over him. What did he just do? The audience did not openly condemn him, but there was a cold understanding in their gaze. He is not a comedian. He is a cheap provocateur. And he lost. He felt his palms become damp. Damn it. Rose glanced sideways at Freeman. He just sat there, calm, not a single movement, not a single word. But that was what killed me the most. It wasn't rage. There was no anger. Freeman was not offended. He wasn't even angry. He just was. And that was enough to destroy everything. Rose realized for the first time that he was not in control of this moment. This evening no longer belonged to him. He didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know how to save myself. He felt himself falling deeper and deeper. And then he did what everyone does who can't admit defeat. He crossed the line. Too far. Too clear. Too rigid. Too irreversible. Okay, fine. Let's be honest. You sit there, Morgan, all cool with that voice of the Almighty God, and you think that makes you superior? You think they can't tell you the truth to your face? He saw what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. But he couldn't stop. He was cornered. You know what I think. Your voice is the only thing you have left. The hall froze. There was no more laughter now. Nobody smiled anymore. People held their breath, but Rose didn't stop. He couldn't. You're afraid that one day you'll wake up, talk, and no one will want to listen anymore. Instant. And it dragged on like an eternity. The border has been crossed. This is no joke now. Now it's personal. But the worst thing is, Freeman did not react at all. He didn't even blink, just looked at him. And that was the scariest thing. Rose felt his own breath tremble, because at that moment he realized he lost. The silence became almost tangible. The room was paralyzed. Everyone knew that something irreversible had just happened. Anthony Rose had crossed the line, and now his words hung in the air like a toxic smog that could not be cleared. Nobody laughed. Nobody tried to smooth things over. Everyone just waited. We waited to see what would happen next. Freeman didn't move. He didn't look away. He didn't make the slightest gesture that could show irritation, anger, or resentment. But it was precisely this, his absolute calm, that made everyone in the room feel uncomfortable. Rose stood in front of him, but suddenly felt tiny. He expected a reaction. He expected indignation, defense, a barb in response, a loud rebuke. But he got something much worse. He received impeccable silence. Freeman rose from his seat, quiet, slowly, measured. And again his steps were heard, dull, deep, like the strokes of a clock, counting down the last moments of this evening, this moment, this situation. He walked toward the stage. The audience held its breath. The waiters, frozen by the walls, did not move. Someone turned their gaze to the host, but he, for the first time all evening, did not know what to do. All the power in this room, all the control, all the energy of the moment flowed into the hands of one man. And it wasn't Anthony Rose. Freeman took the stage. He didn't grab the microphone, didn't turn to the audience. He just stood in front of Rose. Close, too close. So much so that Rose couldn't back down even if he wanted to. But he couldn't. He was cornered by his own words. Then Freeman spoke. Did you want a reaction, Anthony? Rose clenched his jaw as if trying not to show his fear. Freeman did not raise his voice. He didn't need it. His voice was louder than thunder, even in its silence. You wanted me to get angry, to start making excuses, to say something that you could then turn into another joke. Rose didn't answer. He couldn't. Freeman continued. You are mistaken. Rose didn't blink. Do you think people forget that words are just sounds, but words are weapons, and you just turned them on yourself? The room was silent. You said that my voice is the only thing I have left? Freeman nodded slightly as if considering these words. But you know what's interesting, Anthony? Pause. Right now, this is the voice that stands before you, and you're afraid. Rose finally made a move, a barely perceptible step back. But that was enough, because everyone saw it. He retreated. Freeman tilted his head slightly to the side as if studying him. You wanted me to react. And here's my reaction, Anthony. He took another step forward. There was no space between them now. Rose was backed into a corner. Freeman lowered his voice. You lost. Rose exhaled sharply. He seemed to be about to say something, but I couldn't. The hall froze. The pause stretched out, until finally something even more unexpected happened. Freeman turned around, calmly, confidently, as if he had already done everything that was necessary. He walked down from the stage. Rose remained standing, one, unarmed, broken. Freeman returned to his desk. The hall was still filled with deathly silence. It was at that moment that Rose realized he will never be the same again. Freeman sat down at the table, picked up a glass of water, and calmly took a sip. He was in no hurry, didn't look toward the stage, didn't try to enjoy the moment. He just went about his evening as if nothing had happened. But the audience knew what had happened, and Anthony Rose himself knew. He stood alone on stage, clutching the microphone as if it were a life preserver that was about to be torn from his hands and drag him to the very bottom. The hall was waited for him to say something, that he will try to regain control. But Rose didn't know how. How to joke when no one else is laughing. How to speak when everyone is waiting for someone else's words. He froze. For a second, it even seemed to him that he was losing touch with reality. That all these people in front of him are not real. That all this is some kind of dream, a terrible nightmare in which he has driven himself into a corner and cannot get out. But it was reality, and she absorbed it. Rose forced himself to speak. Well, it was awkward. Deathly silence. Come on, people, these are just jokes. His voice became slightly higher than usual. We are all adults here, right? Or is every word a crime now? He laughed at himself, but that was even worse. The audience did not react. Everyone just watched, like a man who has trapped himself and doesn't know how to get out. Rose felt sweat break out on his forehead. For the first time in his career, he didn't know what to do. His voice trembled. But he couldn't just leave. If he leaves, it's the end. He must seize the initiative. Okay, let's look at this from another angle. Since we're on the subject of morality, let's talk seriously. He tried to change tactics. Translate topic. We live in a world where even legends like Mr. Freeman are not immune to criticism, and rightly so. No one should be above a joke, right? He was looking for support, at least one person who will nod, at least one voice that will pick it up. But I didn't find it. Everyone was silent. He continued. Stupid, dangerous. But he continued. By the way, Mr. Freeman, I admire you. I really do. But tell me, has anyone ever told you to your face something you didn't want to hear? Or do you only have fans around you who are afraid to argue with the voice of God himself? Everyone gasped. He climbed back into the hole he had been trying to get out of. Freeman slowly raised his head. He caught Rose's eye. Do you really want me to answer? Rose was momentarily speechless. Well, of course. Freeman stood up slowly. Take your time, measuredly. Every movement he made was pressure. He didn't walk. He loomed like a thundercloud. And Rose knew he had made a mistake. Freeman walked right up to the stage, but he didn't climb it, just stopped in front. He was downstairs, but it seemed like he was taller. He looked straight at Rose, and he said words that everyone will remember forever. Are you asking if anyone has ever told me to my face something I don't want to hear? Pause. Every day. Rose blinked, but Freeman didn't give him a second to react. Onera, when I first started, people told me that my voice was too rough and that my accent was wrong. They said that I didn't have commercial looks. They said that I was too old to succeed. The voices in the hall came to life, but Freeman didn't stop. When I was making films, I was told that I had to play certain roles because people expected it from me. When I won awards, I was told that I was too famous to really deserve them. When I got old, I was told that my time had passed. Rose listened. He had nothing to say. Freeman paused, and then he delivered the final blow. But you know what no one ever told me, Anthony? What? Rose squeezed out. Freeman didn't look away. That I need to be someone else, a bolt from the blue. The hall froze because they understood everything. Rose understood. He crossed the line where humor turns into cowardice, where satire stops exposing and begins to destroy, where the line between someone who is telling the truth and someone who just wants to hurt is blurred. Freeman looked at him one last time, and then he turned around and left. The hall exploded. But Rose didn't hear it anymore. He just stood there, one, in front of thousands of eyes. And for the first time in his life, he didn't know what to say. The silence was deafening. Anthony Rose stood on stage, clutching the microphone, but there was no more sound. He couldn't speak. He couldn't even breathe normally. Sweat ran down his temple. His shirt stuck to his back, but he didn't move. He couldn't believe what had just happened. How? How did he lose the hall? How did he lose himself? Just a minute ago, he was in control of everything. And now he was just a man who had made a mistake. A mistake that is no longer laughed at. A mistake that doesn't result in clapping. A mistake that will stay with you forever. He was left alone on stage. 1. It was worse than a whistle, worse than open aggression, worse than someone screaming in his face to get the hell out, because no one did it, because everyone just kept quiet. And that was the most terrible thing. He looked around the room. People couldn't take their eyes off him, but their views were different. It wasn't interest, not condemnation, not even disappointment. It was an understanding. They realized who he was, and he realized it along with them. The laughter will not return. He won't be able to fix it. Rose swallowed. The microphone became heavy in the hand. Why is he still holding it? He carefully lowered his hand. He unclenched his fingers. Bam! The microphone hit the stage floor. A dull sound broke the silence. And at that moment, he realized. That was the end of him. The hall no longer belonged to him. This moment no longer belonged to him. He no longer belonged to himself. This is what broke him. Bam! The microphone slipped from Anthony Rose's fingers and fell onto the stage with a dull thud. A sound that would normally go unnoticed now pierced the hall louder than any applause. That sound was a dot, the point after which nothing could be fixed. Rose didn't move. He looked down at the microphone as if expecting it to rise on its own. That it was just a dream, and in a second he would wake up in his usual place. In the spotlight. In the spotlight. In safety. But it was reality, and she crushed it. He lost. No longer in comedy, not in show business, in life. No. Sweat was running down his temples, but he didn't even wipe it away. He stared into space, and there was still silence in the hall. People didn't whistle. They didn't shout. They just waited. They waited to see what he would do. How will he get out of this? But he had no choice. Rose took a cautious step back. He didn't even realize he was doing it. It's just an instinct. To leave, to run away, to dissolve. He couldn't stay here. Not after this. He turned around, and he left. Straight from the stage, without looking back, without saying goodbye, without trying to defuse the moment with one last desperate joke. He just disappeared. And only then did the hall begin to stir. The first quiet whisper, then again, and one more thing, and then a roar of voices filled the room, but it didn't mean anything anymore. Rose left. Forever. It all happened too quickly. Rose left, but no one in the room was in a hurry to move. The first telephone rose above the table, then the second one, then the third. A moment later, dozens of screens lit up the room like flickering candles in a cathedral. Someone was recording. Someone was already typing a tweet. Some people only now realized that they had witnessed something historic. The whispers spread through the room like water found in the desert. Did this really just happen? Damn, did you have the video on? Tell me what you were filming. Has anyone posted it yet? We need to check it urgently. Freeman just sat there, not a single unnecessary movement, as if none of this had anything to do with him. But he knew. He knew that at that very second the world was exploding. And it doesn't explode from Rose's joke, and from his silence. 2147 Twitter. The first post appeared less than a minute after Rose left. Just witnessed Anthony Rose destroy himself on live television. Morgan Freeman didn't even raise his voice. Just put him in his place. It was legendary. The first 1,000 likes in 40 seconds. The first wave of reposts will be in 3 minutes. Someone uploaded a short video, a clip of Rose dropping the microphone. Silently, no subtitles, no comments. 2.3 million views in 7 minutes. 2155 TikTok. Ripe Rose started to gain momentum. Top trends. How to kill your career in 30 seconds. Freeman doesn't scream. He just watches, and that's scarier. Comedian wants to mock a legend, but becomes a joke. The videos were breaking the internet. Excerpts from Freeman's speech. Slow motion footage. Rose exiting the stage, accompanied by epic soundtracks. He couldn't stop it anymore. It was more than a scandal. It was a fall. 2210. Instagram, the first celebrities have begun to react. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Today we all saw what real class is. Freeman is the king. Chris Evans. Twitter has already burned down Rose's career faster than I could finish my coffee. Samuel L. Jackson. Morgan. Fucking Freeman. That was fucking beautiful. Celebrities sided with Freeman. Nobody defended Rose. Nobody. He was left alone. 2235 Media. CNN, BBC, Fox News. The New York Times, all the major publications have already picked up the news. Headlines: Freeman puts a comedian in his place who went too far. Rose tried to make a joke and ruined his career. Morgan Freeman's masterclass: How to destroy a person without a single insult. 2250. First response from Rose. A tweet appeared. Dear Anthony Rose. Okay, this has gone too far. You've got it all wrong. They were just jokes, but no one believed it. Likes less than 2,000. There are more than 150,000 answers, and all with one thought. You lost. 2315. Official statement from Morgan Freeman. His post appeared on Instagram. Black background, white text. Words have power. It's how you use them. 1 million likes in 10 minutes. Iroro, zero. Rose deletes all social media. The final blow. He disappeared. Deleted Twitter. Disabled Instagram. Closed YouTube. Disappeared. But that didn't change anything. History was written, and his name was no longer in it. 0107, Los Angeles, Fairmont Century, Plaza Hotel. There was still talk in the hall, but no one was in a hurry to leave. The events of the evening still hung in the air, like a thundercloud that had just burst into a storm, but was in no hurry to disperse. Some guests kept their mouths shut. They understood that this evening would go down in history, and for now it was better to just watch. Others scrolled incessantly on their phones, loading the feed every few seconds with news appearing at the speed of a bullet. But everyone was looking at one figure. Morgan Freeman. He was still sitting at his desk, calmly, relaxed, as if nothing happened. As if he didn't turn the entire industry upside down with his mere presence. As if he didn't destroy a man's career without even raising his voice. Someone coughed cautiously next to him. Mr. Freeman? You? The man hesitated. Did you understand that this would become such a moment? Freeman looked up, and he smiled. Moments are not created. They just happen. Sureport 25. Live on CNN. Gentlemen, we have breaking news. The scandal at a charity event in Los Angeles is only gaining momentum. Anthony Rose, one of the most famous comedians of the new generation, left the stage after a clash with Hollywood legend Morgan Freeman. The reaction on the internet was lightning fast. His jokes caused a wave of criticism, and now users are massively demanding to cancel Rose's contracts and boycott his shows. Many celebrities have already spoken out in support of Freeman. We just received confirmation. Streaming service Hulu is officially terminating its contract with Anthony Rose. As a reminder, he was previously set to host a new comedy show. Netflix has also removed references to the comedian's upcoming stand-up tour from its platform. Is this the end of Rose's career? We'll keep an eye on things as they unfold. 045. Street in front of the hotel. A crowd of journalists and fans had already gathered at the entrance. Everyone was waiting for Freeman to come out. They waited for his words. But when the doors opened, he didn't stop in front of the cameras. Did not provide any comments. Didn't put on a show. He just walked out calmly. And he passed by everyone. Journalists shouted his name. Someone was desperately pulling the microphone forward. Someone already broadcast everything live. But he didn't stop. Freeman always knew that power lies beyond words. And in silence. 001:15. A few blocks from the hotel. He got into the car and asked the driver to just drive. Where? Doesn't matter. He looked out the window watching the city at night. People were walking along the streets. In their eyes, there were no internet scandals, no angry tweets, no news. They just lived. And that was the most important thing. Shawon30. Mysterious tweet. A new tweet has appeared on the internet. The account had no photo, no name, just an empty silhouette, and just 3 words. Words are weapons. Within 10 minutes, the tweet had spread around the world. Fans were guessing. Was it Freeman? Was it someone from the audience? Or was it Rose himself? There was no answer. But it didn't matter anymore. History has already been written. And now she lived her life. Somewhere in Los Angeles, a fragment was shown on a huge screen in the city center. Freeman on stage. His slow, firm voice. A phrase that became a legend. You think words are just sounds. But words are weapons. The crowd just stood and watched. Someone was filming a video. Some people just listened, but no one left. This moment was more than just a scandal. He was true, and now the world could no longer ignore him. Words can destroy, but words can remain in history, and today the name Morgan Freeman remains forever in it.